Hello, and welcome to Floating Poly. This is the stylized art stream that I'm doing, where we're just going through and making some interesting anime art. In this case, I've been working on a Touhou Project character, Sakuya Izayoi, for the past sort of few months. And where we're up to right now is texture painting. I have her loaded up in Marmoset tool bag right now. And what we're going to be doing is flicking between Substance Painter and the Marmoset preview I've got set up so that we can see how our hand painting texturing is going on. So without further ado, if we just switch over to Substance Painter, and we can see on the left I've got a snippet of Marmoset Toolbag, and on the right, like the full screen, is of course Substance Painter. Just flicking back to Marmoset just for a brief moment. If we just take a look around the model that we've just got some basic lighting set up where it's just 3-point lights. And if we go ahead and just rotate the model just around, there are a couple of things that I did fix since yesterday actually. So the first one being this hair piece here. It is mostly revolving around this piece. So before, the hard edges that were going along here were much more visible. All right. So what I did, rather than having to do massive amounts of reprojections or anything, we just took this particular section and we just moved it around and pulled the edges until the seam was much less noticeable. So we did this for both sides. So when we look at it now, it's a lot less jarring than it was before. Essentially, that's that. We also fixed some things around the sort of waist area where the vertices weren't quite merged together. So all in all, very productive. So whoops. Right, so if we just select the whole thing and then rotate it back around and get our view back in. It's only a like a test view. It's just so that we can see what the model looks like in engine as we work on the textures, right? We've got basic sort of gradients and some ambient occlusion in there, but in terms of the actual texture painting process, that's what we're going to be doing today. So alright, I'm just going to make sure that's all okay there. Just get her around the center of the screen to the same kind of angle that we had before. We're going to be working on some of the ends of the hair here, the braids, and of course the bangs in there, although you won't really be able to see them that well, so we don't need to spend too long on that. And then we'll move down over to the upper chest, the upper torso. We'll move down into the apron, the skirt and such, and we'll try and think of some cool substance specific texturing techniques while we're there. So, right, we'll get that around there, and we'll flick back to Substance Painter and just readjust the model just so that it can be seen well in the little preview window I've got there. Alrighty, and just as a reminder, this is very much an open stream, so if you are here live, you are free to ask any kind of questions, give any kind of feedback, and I will respond. Okay, thank you so much. So let's get this in a state where we can actually work on it. Now, when we go into the base color channel view so that we can look at purely the color information that we've got, obviously the opacity won't be shown. So with our eye shields here, they're going to render black. So there we are, scary image. And there we go, we've just taken that away. So now we got up to around this point last time. So you see that these bits here just still aren't quite finished. We're going to work on these. Hopefully we'll get that done pretty quickly. So let's just make sure we're on the correct layer. I think it's this one. Yep, that's our simple painting layer. And what we do have as well is we have this copy of the paint layer, and we've got that on overlay and an adjusted opacity value, in this case 17%. Now obviously we would need to update this, but it's just a really quick way of being able to say, oh, actually, maybe it would be good if it was darker, for instance, or after you've done everything, maybe you do want to do some post adjustments onto a given layer, to really boost it up or take it back. So let's just take that off for now. We'll do, like, if we want it again, we'll just duplicate it from the layer that we have. Just save that real quick. And adjust our brush, get ourselves some decent flow, make sure pen pressure is on the flow section. And I've got a sample button set up for texture painting. But what also is important to bear in mind, when you sample in Substance Painter, it samples every possible parameter that it picked up from that source. In this case, it's picked up color and roughness. So, but you don't necessarily want to be painting roughness in when you are just painting your color, right? So if we go over to the roughness section on this, it's currently on normal right now. So if we just disable it, and there we go. So it won't, it should not show any kind of roughness information. So if we were to go over to roughness now, go on normal, yep, and you see how that roughness has transitioned over. Now, you might not want that, so we can always put it on disable and then incorporate the roughness ourselves, like manually later. But for now, we're going to leave it on normal. Like we might like the effect that it gives after all. So, and back to viewing base color and switching back to base color on here. I have the shortcut set to Shift C for switching to around the channels, and then I've got I think it's C, yes, C for the actual sampling of the base color. You do have to go in the settings to configure that. It's not something that's set up by default, so if you want to be able to do that, it tends to become a lot easier if you set up that, particularly when you're painting. So you want to look for something like sample or pick color or something like that. So we're just going to go over and assist that gradient a little bit, because we have a gradient going upwards from the tips, but this allows us to more artistically control that and be able to paint the effect that we want. Okay. Now we do have some reuse of UVs going on, so there is a chance that when we go over and paint this, right, it might not even do anything. So like over here, I paint and I paint and I don't get anything. That's because if we were to go over to the UV view, when you're painting in Substance Painter, you don't really want the paint to overlap, because there's a chance that it might basically duplicate your input. So if this UV island was over here, right, on top of its sister UV island, right? So if both of these were on top and then you painted in there, it might interpret that twice. So much like how you wouldn't project with the UVs on top of each other, you wouldn't really want to be doing that. Although it's obviously a lot less of an impact when projecting, you wouldn't really want to be doing that here. So that's why we've got it like that. But it does mean that you have to be painting on the correct UV. But that's what this UV view is for. So we can paint directly onto the 3D model so long as we know which one is the actually active one. Alternatively, I suppose, so symmetry might help. So if we've got it on the other side and we have symmetry on, then it will reflect over. But of course, you have to be aware that there's a chance that you might be inputting it twice, because all it's doing is reflecting that input from one side to the other. But if it doesn't exist anyway, then like it doesn't exist in that 0 to 1 space, this box, then it might not even register anyway. But that's okay, you don't want to be inputting twice anyway. So anyway, if we just check, yep, this strand here is a copy of this. Well, this strand is the original, and then this strand is the copy. So if we're going over and painting on this, it's not going to work. What we can do is just try and understand where this strand actually exists. It's over there. And if we need to do anything particularly intricate, we can do it over on the UV view. Alright, so we're just going to make our pen smaller, increase the flow a bit more. Right, because you don't want to be completely drowning it. We do have pen pressure, but Substance tends to, the pressure curve seems kind of aggressive, and I suppose you could find it and edit it, but it would be nice for it to be consistent, right? Because when you're used to a particular pressure, you don't want to be changing it. I don't think you'd want to be anyway. Oh, I'm doing exactly that. There you go. He's over here. So go ahead. Get lower. Lower. Okay, and we've got some level of guidance from an ambient occlusion render already on here. I think it's over here. Yes. So what we have over on this group is an ambient occlusion bake that's been done in Substance. Well, it's not really a bake, it's more like a filter or a generator. So if you go over and you make a generator, we've got it somewhere around here if it would like to move. There we are. So yes, this one. So over here is just a black material, just black, and the mask associated with it has an ambient occlusion generator, and all that does is just basically throw on our ambient occlusion at a certain opacity and a set of parameters that we can fiddle with, and then that's giving us a little bit of a guide in terms of where we can paint and perhaps what should we be painting. So it just helps out a little bit to know where the edges are, because when you're painting in the base color channel view, you're not gonna get any shading, so you can't tell where an object sort of starts and when it ends, when it's overlapping, or where are the edges, that kind of thing. So really helps with this. Now we're starting to get much more in the intricate areas. Okay. Just want to check where I'm painting. Can't quite see it. Yeah. And I want to go over and just sample and blend. See this bit here as well. I want to blend that so the changes aren't so like blobby or harsh in places where it doesn't look like they should be. And I'm using a very light pressure and sampling the color next to it to get this. ultimately we're more concerned about the outside view, so where the camera looks onto the character's hair rather than the inside, but the inside should still be at least painted somewhat. And I've got this sort of contrast of sort of light and dark shapes there. Okay. Alright, and we'll get some over here as well. And you can see that's a pretty intricate area over there. I'm just going to quickly work out where it is. It's about here. Yeah, just over here. So I'm just going to fill that in over there. And then we'll refine it over here just a bit. The kind of cool thing is that because we're working on the roughness and the base color at the same time, our roughness is kind of automatically being filled here. So when we go over and rotate it round, you should see that way less light is going. Oh wait, hang on. No, because in terms of our roughness, the darker area is less rough. So we may need to do some inversion or something, or some hand painting just to correct it, but that's fine. That's not an issue. We'll probably try with correction first, like so just inversion, sorry, and then we'll try if we need more, we can then do some like quicker painting. Like it doesn't have to be like completely one-to-one. You don't, and even then I'm sure that there are some filters or some way of like copy pasting the value of it into a mask some way or another. Even if it means like we gotta export the map and run it through Photoshop or something. It could be something like that. I'm gonna just check the hardness that the brush has got. Not very much, so we just give it a little bit more. Alright, and I want to go over and just paint some of this just to find where it is. It's about here. And just go over and just quickly throw down a dark color here just so that I can see where I need to throw some darker shade in. Because with the inside, I want that to be shaded darker. Okay, because there's nothing like, even though it's physically based, even though you've got wonderful things like ambient occlusion and like even screen space ambient occlusion to some degree, right? Like if a light happens to fire a ray in a particular place that's not supposed to. It's very possible that it might attempt to light that pixel with the same level of brightness as you would expect the outside of the hair. So there is still some level of authoring that you have to do. I think. I mean, yeah, we do have ambient occlusion. That tends to help a lot, but you got to at least set your roughness depending on your ambient occlusion, right? So that you're basically saying that stuff that is in darkness should not be as rendered as lit as strongly, as something that is in light. And some game engines like Unreal will take that from the ambient occlusion map itself, but until you go over and you play with it in engine, you won't know. Unless, of course, you have a very deep understanding as to how the engine works, in which case, yeah, you would know that answer. Yes. Most of this area is the back, so we want to just go over, pull some of that up, and just check that I'm not affecting any of the front. We will be, but it may be because of the stroke type here. It's on tangent wrap. Let's put this on UV for now. Just see. Right, okay. So they all do wrap around a little bit. But they still have some amount of light that goes through, right? Just being careful not to undo some of the work we've already done. All right. Okay. I just want to check where this bit is. Oh, I would check. It might be over here. Yeah. Ah, yeah, that's the center, of course. And this should be the back. Yes. About there. And then this bit over here relates to the outside. The part that faces the outside. So I'm just going to go through up. Right. There we go. Just want to fill this bit. Most of this is going to be obscured by the head anyway, so it's not that much of an issue. Also being overlapped by the other two parts there, basically these two. We just need to find out where exactly that is. It's around here. Right here. That's the funny thing about using Substance Painter or 3D Coat as your main sort of painting application. Or ZBrush, I guess, but in ZBrush you kind of project after, which is that if you just paint on the model, it will reflect as to where that relate to pretty easily. Alright then. Yep, more. Just more. Keep going, keep going. There you go. And we didn't wreck anything over here. Cool. That's alright then. Okay. All that. Just check the. Yeah, that's fine. Mostly. It'll be about here where that's happening though. Yes. Give that a bit of a gradient. Don't want to overwork this area too much because we did this bit yesterday, so. Plus this bit is symmetried, so we don't want to go too far and accidentally like destroy what we have. Okay. Oops. I guess it's over here. Yeah, there we are. Just had to go a little further. And just throw down a little bit of colour down there. And we're going to go over and refresh our marmoset preview shortly. I just want to try and fill in as much of this as I can get before I do that. Because I imagine most of this is probably just going to be fine. About there. Yeah. Because we want the inner part to be darker. Yeah. But at the same time, we still got to work on these tips just a little bit as well. Not super hard, but just a little bit of working on it. Just enough to, like, if the hair were to move, you should be able to see, you know, in screenshot, right, that it was actually painted properly. You know. So in other words, if the camera can see it, you should probably work on it. If the camera never sees it, it probably shouldn't even be there. If of course it's, unless of course it's, you know, something like this where the poly does indeed have to be there. So. Plus there's also this slightly intricate bit here. That's over here. Paint that shape. Oops. You'll see me do that a lot. Okay. Okay. Let's just go ahead and do a quick review on Marmoset. So the way we do this is that we just go over and export the textures, but we export them to the same place that Marmoset has loaded. So in this case, we've got export document. We only export the hair because that's the only thing we're working on at the moment. Hit export. They all go to the same directory where Marmoset has targeted those textures. So if we go over here and back in, Marmoset should load the changes, assuming, of course, that they definitely are pointing in the same direction, which they should be. It did take a slightly shorter amount of time to load than I thought, so that's what was surprising me a little. But we just go ahead and rotate the model towards the light, and then we'll make our judgment from there. Go to previewer, and what we'll do as well is isolate it. So there's quite a lot of models here. Okay, alright then. So if we're just going to go over and hide all the other pieces until we get to the hair, we'll just leave that bit in there. There's a lot of pieces, but you know, when you're projecting it, you do want a lot of the pieces to project their own normals to prevent crosstalk. Obviously, there are ways around that. And if you're baking in Substance, you've got a few more options, I think. But generally speaking, when you're baking in Marmoset, you'll be using baking groups to resolve that. But it still means that you're going to be splitting your mesh up into pieces, which tends to work better. Alright, so now that we got that, just check that. Yep, okay. Rotate that round towards the light again, and we'll just judge the middle, the inner parts. Check that. The shadows are throwing me off a little bit. So I can't actually, like, as in the Marmoset shadows are kind of making things a little difficult. So just wondering if we can actually disable it. Oh, ludicrous, no. Can't seem to find the place to disable shadows. Whether if ambient occlusions anything? No. Okay. Quick mode? No. Alright then. Alright then. We go low. Ludicrous. At least then I'll be able to tell what's a shadow and what isn't, right? So. Okay. You'll find that when you're texture painting, you won't really be able to see that much in effect going on unless you make it absolutely extreme. But then that defeats the purpose of a PBR based texture, like hand painted texture. So you don't want to go too far and make it so easy to see that you've now overtaken the lighting information that you're trying to be using. So just bear that in mind. Right, over here. This one, yeah. Pull that gradient up. a little bit. Okay, and over here is where it starts to get occluded by another form, but where is it? There. We just go over to our the material view and have another look in terms of where the edges start and finish. Okay. And again, we just want to make sure that it's definitely in more darkness than the other side. Sorry, I was just checking something there. I just want a little bit back, not too much. There. That'll do. Right, so when we look at that, another one there. Just check this bit. Yep, this bit is the outer face, so to speak. So just being slightly careful. There's a bit over here as well that can use some additional help. And I think most of it is over on the central hair part. Yeah, most of it is there. Just check it. This bit belongs to the one next to it, so it can be a bit of a task to blend them sometimes. We'll just find where that is. Alright, okay, here. Okay, I'm definitely on UV. Oh yeah, because this side is duplicating, of course. Derp. It's be about here. Looking at, yeah, here. And this side. Oh yeah, still part of that. There we go. It's a little better. Don't go too far. Don't go too far. Okay. Okay, cool. Back in there. What you do find as well with painting in Substance Painter is that it does tend to be quite soft. You can paint harder and you can use harder brushes, but then you will need to be quite precise with it because it's very easy to apply pressure. So incredibly easy to do so that and if you make a mistake, it can be difficult to fix, obviously without, you know, undo. Right? Not that you shouldn't use undo or anything, it's just that let's say you paint a stroke and you forget about it, you're then going to have to paint over it, or you know, if you've shaded something and it wasn't quite right, it might take a while to get it right. Over here. I see, right, yeah. So this bit here gets a seam because that's where that area is cut off. Understandable. With areas with seams, you want to be more painting on the actual 3D asset than the 2D UVs, even though you can change your alignment type to something a little bit more natural, like camera or tangent wrap. You're going to find that it's difficult to line them up in that UV view. And so where you've got seams, you're going to want to paint over the seam in the 3D view so that you catch both sides, so to speak. You'll catch both UV islands. If you don't do that, then you might find that you get seams. That being said, I've got one here, right? So, and this one is not quite playing as nicely, yeah, because it's on UV alignment. If we try with camera alignment, it should go a lot better, and so it does. There we are. Brilliant. Right. Okay. Saves that bit. There's a cool shape here that I want to preserve. Okay. Alright, so the sharpness of some of this stuff can be improved. Just to, with stylization, intent I think is very important. You need to be able to show that you mean what you say. This is what I think. So this shape really is this shape. It's not some abstract thing. Well, it might be abstract, but it's not. Sorry, the actual shape isn't up to interpretation. It looks like what it's meant to look like is what I'm saying. Okay. Alright. Starting to get much more intricate. And painting between strands, basically, where they're obviously merged in the low poly. But it still makes quite a bit of a difference. If we didn't necessarily paint in there, it might not. But there might still be an impact if we do. Strange that the mouse cursor is doing that. It doesn't normally, right? Yeah, there we go. That was a little weird. Hmm. Gradient up. Just in my chair. Do you know where that bit is? That's over there. This bit here. Oops. Yes, over here. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yes, it's about here. this bit's connected up to the bangs over there as well. Well, but of course, the only issue with that is that it might be a little difficult to tell where they are, but they're over here. But this piece here, where it splits off here, is split into a number of different parts. So this can be interesting to paint over. And by interesting, I mean intricate and annoying. So the only issue is that Substance can't necessarily hide or unhide specific meshes. It can only do this for its material set, and of course, much like you know, most people making models here, you probably wouldn't, you know, split your hair into like different materials purely just so that you could paint a texture and then like have to combine it again afterwards in Photoshop. You wouldn't do that. So that does become slightly tricky where you'll be using the UV view to do a bit of it, but then to actually fix the seams you'll have to go into an awkward camera view where you try to rejoin up everything together, just basically by painting over it, and it can be frustrating. I'm sure that there are better ways of going about it though. Presumably, you know, it might involve more substance, like not code, but more like programmatic ways of doing things. So, you know, layers and masking and such. But when you're doing like hand painted stuff, you can't really avoid that, and you have to paint at somewhat awkward angles when you're doing things like this. If it was just, you know, a texture, probably wouldn't be so bad. But because it's we're actually going over and painting some light information and roughness information as well in some cases, it can be quite difficult to manipulate the model in the way that you want it to appear. And that's assuming, of course, that you're even manipulating the model at all, and that because more likely than not, the problem is down to the base mesh, you know, or the low poly mesh that you have. So just bear that in mind. Sorry. Okay. We're almost done with the back of the hair anyway. Yeah, it's probably just the part that I gotta find. That's over here. True. Okay. Over here as well, we want to go ahead and throw in some dark gradient on there. Painting can be a slow but therapeutic process. And it can feel sometimes like that you're taking really, really long to do a particular part, right? But it may just be that, I mean, of course it could be that you don't know what you're doing and that, you know, you're just going through with it, and then you find that you have to correct a lot of things, so you end up spending more time. But that's just time learning, you know. So I do feel like, for instance, this is taking quite some time, but you know, I imagine that my approach is going to be better next time. You know, like, and it might be a little bit more structured. So next time, for instance, like what we could do is explode the mesh a bit. So if we export it from Maya in a complete way, but also in a way where the mesh is, you know, have been separated a bit more, it may help to have that. So perhaps like you just have like a copy on over this side or whatever, and because of course it's out of the way, you shouldn't have that much of a risk of cross-talking it when painting in the 3D view, but you might have some difficulty in 2D view. Okay. We're just checking in like a further away type of view. You know, how is it looking? Is there anything that stands out that shouldn't stand out? Yeah, when I look at this, for instance, should I be able to see, what are the things that I should or shouldn't be able to see? And then what are the things that I shouldn't be seeing but I have to accept happen as a result of, say, modular UVs, for instance, right? Because if you were to go over and look at one of these strands and then compare to the one lower than it, you know, you would expect to see, for instance, that that strand might be darker, the one underneath, and yeah, of course it would be. But there are also, you know, if it's not being handled by, say, ambient occlusion or something for whatever reason, and you've got like full bright on, then yeah, of course, you're gonna see it be the exact same as the other thing. But since we do have things like ambient occlusion, it should, and of course, you know, real lighting, things like that should be fine, and just worry about what it looks like in engine. Alright. Okay. Alright, so that's pretty okay so far. There's just some parts here that could probably be a little bit darker. Oops. Help if I was editing the right thing. Over here. Go ahead and throw in some dark area in that to make it a little bit darker. And then analyze this bit. Okay. Just need to tell where exactly is it that I've painted that. There, yeah. Alright, cool. There, get some of that as well. Find this bit a little bit more. Not quite as dark though. Hmm. Alright, okay. That's looking alright. And just need to work out where that is. A bit more difficult than it sounds. That's about here. Okay. That bit I'll fix up, if possible. Not finding. Ah, there we are. About here. So I want to put a gradient over here. Gotta redraw that. This bit over here as well, just darken that. Oh, it was over there. Try and sharpen that a little bit more. Just check the sharpness. There, much more now. And that's how we'll get that much sharper. A little less opacity though. And that gets us that. Let's float. Okay. As long as it can be. Oh, yeah, it was over here. Yeah, but sometimes it can be hard to detect exactly where your mesh is sometimes. A bit in the back too. Where is it? That's over there. Let's see. And again, I have to do it with the 3D view. This one's a super tricky one. It's on its own little island. It's also attached on. Okay, so let's see how that's doing. Let's see what that looks like. I wonder, did it even load anything? Just gonna really quickly like check. Oops. Did I mess up? Might have done. Yes, I have. I think I've loaded an old one in there. Yeah, that's definitely the older one. Whoops. That was dumb. Just check the export directory one more time. Ah, yeah. Went into the wrong directory. That doesn't mean like all of those were wrong. It's just that that one file I just loaded, like to try and reload it, was wrong. So there we go. That's better now. It's just that it doesn't really make enough of a difference for me to see, unless of course I were to go over and unload and reload everything. Anyway, well, with that, at least we've got the colours. So just do some minor lighting correction there, and then just paint the braid. Now the braid we can do pretty much just on the 2D view, but and you can see that the AO map render is there. It's just that it's very harsh. So when you look at it like this, it's not very well distributed. So that can be a bit hard. So what we're going to do is that we're going to add another folder. But before that, actually, what we can do, we can delete the old copied layer adjustment. We'll make another one. Is it Control D? Yes, it is. Okay, so we've got the layer adjustment here. Well, not really adjustment. Not really adjustment. It's just a copy. Throw it on overlay, and you see how drastically that changes. So if we play around with that, get it down to 0. Okay, so that's what we had before, and then upwards and upwards until we reach some slightly more dramatic part. Something more like that. It's not meant to be very much. Okay, but what we're ultimately trying to do is just say that the back of the hair is much darker than the front, well, the outward, part. So the inner parts are going to be much darker due to the way that works. It could also be an issue where the roughness has been is affecting the way that works. So the things that we can do about that then. So if we go over to the roughness channel, there we are. Right, so white being more rough, like black being less rough, right? So we can see already that that's a slight issue where this back area is more rough than the actual crevices. It should be less rough, really. Well, no, it should be more rough, but it's glossier. So let me, if I can get my words out correctly, let's go ahead and make a let's do something where we can try and invert it, perhaps. So can we inverse divide or something? Not like that. Can we make a fill layer or something like that? Not that one. Fill layer, perhaps. Roughness of something. We'll say 1 right now, and then go ahead and say inverse divide or something, and just start throwing a number in there. Just have a look. Not that much different, although there is an effect over there. Divide. Inverse subtract, perhaps. Maybe not quite like that, but it's getting the point. In that, we try. Go to 1 and see what we got here. See what we got before, after. That makes sense. So when this is on and we've got an inverse subtract on, it's just taking it, inverts it, and then subtracts that value. So if we were to go over and throw 0, obviously it's got nothing because it literally takes everything away. But if we've got 1, what it looks like it's doing is that the parts that were originally dark have become brighter, and the parts that were brighter have become darker. So in other words, they are more glossy. The only issue with this, of course, is that this is now too glossy. So can we go over and then just balance that out a bit more? We can do, but it then you reach this sort of equilibrium where everything becomes kind of equal. Well, where basically it starts shifting into the other sides. So let's see what else we can do. Just, playing around with it and finding out what we can do. Difference, exclusion, oops. overlay. Overlay seems okay, but then you might have to take away after screen. Okay, maybe not like that, but what we might be able to do instead is perhaps a filter or something. So if we add this filter, sometimes the scroll thing doesn't quite play with you. Alright, so this filter, we want it only on roughness, and we want to go something like invert. I'm sure it exists. And it does. There you go. That makes a little bit more sense. Right, so just turn it on and off. So off, okay. On, there we are. Just see if we had that before, that after. That's before, go back to after. Okay. And just look at the value we had before on the fringe as well. The fringe doesn't have any of this treatment, so. But the point being is we might apply it to the fringe. We'll just see what it does and if it's worth doing. And of course it depends what value this is in the first place. Perhaps we can go over and add a perhaps we can use this as well on top of this. We go, I don't know, multiply, right? And just see what we get, right? Okay, not quite what I want. I want to divide it instead, maybe. Maybe not like that. Overlay. A little bit, it's just a little extreme. Okay, so that's now getting me the parts that we did paint have become much more rough, and the parts that we didn't paint are much less rough, so arguably. We'll just have a play and see what happens. So let's get the Marmoset preview just to see what's going to happen with that. Go ahead and rotate this round just to get a better view and position our little preview window. Something like that. And let's just see what happens, right? It's all about trying things out. Okay, there we go. And let's look at our preview. As we can see, because we've changed the roughness value up so high, now the way the light has spread has caused it to become very different to the way that the fringe worked there. So that's obviously not desired, but you wouldn't know it if you didn't try it, right? So let's go ahead and move that more towards where that is. Okay. So clearly not like that. But what we could do is try disabling this roughness. Did I even have it on to begin with? Or maybe that might have affected some things. Did I have that on? Oh yeah, I did. It's the inverted one, right? Okay. You know what, let's leave it with it off. Okay, so that's like on disabled, not visible. Right, so this is like if we have not changed our roughness via any kind of painting whatsoever. So let's give that a try. Export that. Okay, right, so that brings us back to normal, but we did lose quite a bit of like difference in the way that it was. So even though the the like the base color doesn't affect that much, we did lose a certain variety of information there. So let's go ahead and give this another try. So in this case, it's got it has less roughness over at the top, more roughness down below. Go ahead and invert that. Give it a try. And I imagine it's going to appear as it did before. So then we'll try inverting it again. Yeah, it did. So if we go over and disable our invert, because the values will have been shifted. Right, so like if you add a value of 60%, it's going to become 40%, but it's not been shifted to compensate. Not sure that makes that much sense. There you go. See, that's like what we had before, but does it make sense? And it would be quite nice to be able to use that paint information that we painted, even if it was only a small amount of information, and it only has a small effect. It was definitely better to have that variance than to to have omitted it, as you may have seen. Right? That variance in the roughness has made a better effect on the way that the anisotropic map is playing with the surface versus when it wasn't there at all and everything was pretty much very samey. So let me just rotate this around a little. Yeah. So now the thing is that when you paint information in Substance Painter on like a paint layer rather than a fill layer mask, it becomes much harder to change this kind of information. But we can always try. And the way that I guess we would go about this is to kind of state what we want to do. So we want this information up here to become rougher. We want the information down here to become glossier. But at the same time, we want this information to be the same as the stuff over here. And then everything that is darker here should be darker than, this should be rougher than everything over here. In other words, what we have to do after we invert this area, then has to be shifted to match this, if that makes any sense. So we invert, this area is now kind of similar to this. This area is now super glossy compared to this. So we're going to go over and try something. So we've got this. I'm going to go linear dodge or something like that. Or in fact, if we try and use this layer again, oops, not Control J, that's a Photoshop shortcut. Control D. I'm going to go linear dodge. It's got the invert on as well, which we may or may not need. And if we go over and boost it, try to boost it. Try it with the invert, try it without the invert. That's super rough. Maybe try it with the more generic thing, like to try and shift it. It's not even on. Oops, not with that one, do it with this one. So I want that value, the bottom, to match that, which I don't think it does right now. Okay. Oops. Alright, so let's see. So I wonder if there's a way to like sample that. Not easily. Try on base color. And let's just see as well, because this layer will have been made as well. We don't want it to interfere with what we've done on base color. Oh, what's this? Because I'm under fill layer. Base color as well. The invert. Oh, the invert is on there because it doesn't need to be there. If it would like to load, that would be grand. Let me just check that. Ah, that's what. Also, the other reason why it was doing that. I wasn't paying any real attention. Should have noticed that. That's why. But we can try it anyway. It did still change the way the specular worked as well. Well, yeah. So I want to just see while I'm here. You don't get that much information on hair in Substance Painter though. Like as in, I don't think there's like an anisotropic shader, or there might be, but it's specific. Alright, give that an export. Right, let's see what happens with that. Okay, so it took away the specular here, because that's where we painted most of this dark area, which is I'm not sure that I like that much. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's still there. It is still there, and it's quite controlled, which I appreciate. But at the same time, I could argue that it's not quite as varied as it could be. So if I were to go to roughness, and it does take a while sometimes too. Like when you're switching between a bunch of different channels, it might take a while to sort of realize that that it needs to keep something loaded. Hopefully Adobe will fix that. You know, so it is one of the few hopeful things I've got about Adobe buying Substance Painter, is that perhaps there will be more support So I'm gonna try lowering. Oh no! I should increase it. Yeah, we'll try increasing it. And can we get sampling going so that I can tell what the value is we're picking? So this is a value of 0.6667. Where did I pick it from? I picked it from here, right? Yeah, okay. Now if we go here, that's a value of 0.824. So we can go a little bit further down. Where are we? 0.9. Right, so we went higher. Let's just go a little higher. 0.66, 0.8, a little lower. I wouldn't fuss too hard about exact values, just, you know, ballpark area. There you go. Oops, save. Right, that's just saving. But again. Yeah. See what we get. Okay. Not that much different. Arguably, it seems alright. What we'd like to do though is to get some more difference when in between those values. So what we can do is instead we go over just to roughness. I'm going to say a huge amount of roughness, like say 0.96 or something. And what we're going to do, add a black mask on, add a generator. I want to get a ambient occlusion, I think, or curvature, one of these two. We can try either ambient occlusion or curvature. Let's try curvature first. And what we're trying to do is that we want to get the cavities, basically. We do have cavity maps baked, but let's see what we can get with generator first. And if we have to resort to a cavity map, we can do that. So, oh, on there, yeah, roughness. That yes, that's fine. Yeah, invert on means basically it's doing nothing. And just get some way of. I don't know. The only issue is it can be a bit difficult to tell where you're targeting with just that. So what might be more useful when you're looking at doing this type of generation is to temporarily give yourself a color and set that color to something stupid like, you know, bright red or something. Right, there you go. And immediately we can see where we're targeting. You know, we go over and change that after, but the point being is if we go over into this view, we should now be able to tell, okay, where are the cavities and how am I going to get there? How am I going to take this and find the cavities, you know, via these settings? It might even be that it doesn't find them and we have to use a different filter. But and from the looks of things, there we go, cavities. That would probably make sense. Although it's not finding very much at the moment. Just want to try and maybe it's because invert. Yeah, that would make some sense, right? So sharp it understands. Soft, medium, large, big, huge, contrast. No, it's not finding a heck of a lot, I'm afraid. That's okay. We'll just have to say bye-bye to that generator and we'll switch to something like ambient occlusion, perhaps. That's probably going to have much more effect, or we can use metal worn edges as well. That's another option. Let's try Ambient Occlusion. So let's invert that. See what we get. Not a lot. The Ambient Occlusion map, if we look, oh well, we've even got a mask view that actually does help as well. Maybe, let's see, yes. But as we can see on the Ambient Occlusion map that we have here, it's not really got the cavities that we want. Okay, that's fine. So we're going to say bye-bye to that, and we're going to look for, I think I should have a cavity map baked. We're going to use that instead. Just need to find it, see if we actually have it somewhere. Over maps. Ah, there we are. Right, so, and if we just go to our project folder, go ahead and throw this in there. Find it as a texture, import to the project, import, and just have a look at it. Would like it if it there we go. It may have already been imported. Cavity. There you are. Right, it may have already been imported, in which case, yeah, it's fine. So add in our fill. Yep, there we go. Add in the cavity map. You can see that it's got, well, it does have it, but it's a bit, how shall we put it? It's not quite targeting the places that we want it to. So firstly, we'll add a filter, invert easily enough. All right, so that's the start of it. But we also want to add, I think, levels. Add another, not the filter. It would be quite literally levels. And we're just going to play with this until we get something closer to what we want. Now, as you can see, as I go much further towards the 0, the cavities start showing up. What you get is that it gets quite noisy and messy, just a little bit. So, first thing is to aim for a bit of a sweet spot in terms of how many lines you want to get at and how thick they need to be. You don't want them to be particularly thick either. Maybe. And then we manipulate the 0. Oops, not that one. There's a 0 here that works better. To try and eliminate some of the more accidental cavities. And this one in particular here. I'm going to try and get contrast in that. Make it easier to have it in this view. It may even be that we got to paint it out as well. Okay, so you see like these areas here, it might just be a case where we have to paint it. But there, okay. And then add another filter. What we want to do is get like a blur. Because cavity maps tend to, when you sort of compress them with levels in this way to try and make your darks darker and your brights brighter, you tend to get cases where it's sort of where you've got these in-between values that are next to each other that either go one way or another, and then this sort of results in this sort of pixely dotty effect, and it really hurts it. So what we try and do is just blur it a bit. And then throw maybe another levels on, just to try. See if we can get something a little bit neater. So boost that up, then go back to our blur, increase it a bit, maybe. Then go back to our levels. Increase. There's always going to be some dottiness about it, but it's, you know, you're not going to fix it 100%. Killing it. And there's always going to be parts where you're going to have to manually correct it anyway. But for the purposes of, you know, trying to get a result, let's see what we got with that. So now that we've got that, we go to the real view here. We see that we're pointing this, and this. If we go to roughness, okay, this seems to achieve what I'm asking for. So these parts here, much rougher, so there shouldn't be light information going in there. Shouldn't be, right? Because it's so rough that it doesn't reflect anything back. That's the idea. So if we go over here, back again, disable the color, and if we're in material view, you don't see that much of a difference going on. Not in substance anyway. And if we go back to roughness, we disable that. Is it this one? Even with it disabled, it's still... Oh, it's been disabled in base color. Whoops. And then disable it here. Yeah, so that gives us a consistent roughness across the whole thing, but our cavities then have this, where the parts that have been inset are then rougher and shouldn't reflect stuff. Now, we'll have a look and see what it does, and have a go. But what I'm hoping for is that there should be a very sort of visible lack of light in those areas. But given our lighting setup, it might not necessarily be visible. Let's give it a try, right? You know, this is basically the final experiment for this that we've got time for today. It's a little disappointing that we didn't quite get everything done on this hair, but sometimes it can be quite, you know, interesting in terms of how long things take when you're experimenting, for instance. I don't really see that much of a difference here, to be honest. I'll just rotate it like closer. Or this way. Not that much of a difference, to be honest. I mean, it's there, but it might need to be more exaggerated. Put that back there. Alright, so I guess we can try one more thing before we call ourselves done for today, because this roughness value is clearly higher than this thing. The scrolling does not always play nice on a tablet. I don't know why, but if I do it with the mouse, it seems perfectly happy. Okay, let's see. Where's this? Oh yeah, this one's disabled. So this base value is taken. Clearly doesn't quite like. Okay, so if we go over and use the non-inverted version, just go have a look. That's 7.8. That's 0.67. A bit low at the moment. That's 0.63. That's 0.67. And if we go over here, that's 0.75. That's 0.7. Then lower a bit, not too low. 0.66, 0.66. Again, you're still gonna get like the lower it's going, the rougher it is, but I just want to try and see if we can actually make a visual difference. So, okay, final export this time. We're going slightly over, but that's okay. I just want to see what happens, right? So now that we've got like a little bit more extreme of a difference, will it do with anything? Will it change the way that behaves? Well, clearly you get more sheen out of it because that's the new lower glossiness going in, and to be honest, I like that quite a bit. To some degree, I think there is something going on. Like it's not quite like drawing in a line that clearly, you know, says, oh, this bit is deeper and this bit isn't. Actually, with that cavity map that we have, you know what? Sorry, I'm going to do another one. It's the last one. But if we go over and take the color and go to, somewhere quite dark, go back to our base color. Now we've got that there. So if we make it pretty much black, like that, and if we just play around with some of these a little more as well, the levels here, for instance, try and increase the amount. Well, I think I've got it pushed as far as it will go, just so that I can see a difference in the way that it's behaving. Because base color still affects the way that the color that is going to be rendered out. It may be that we also just need more paint differences in between, strands of hair, so to speak. Obviously, this is pretty rough. Back over there, just take that down a little. All right, so now we've got that, which is obviously very messy, but we'll go with it. And just, there we go. Great, final export. Export it out and we'll see. Okay. Right, load it up. So we can see that there are differences in the color. We can see that the mask is doing work visually, but that's more because of the actual base color. But I don't really see enough of a visual difference. We may need to actually start diving into height map information on Substance Painter, but we'll have a go. But that will have to be if we have results for it that we can show, we'll show it next time. But unfortunately, that next time is not tomorrow. Tomorrow is a game stream, and if I just pull up the schedule just as a reminder, the actual so Monday to Friday and Saturday, mind you, is 3D art stream. I'll correct that bit. It should say Saturday as well, because today is Saturday, hilariously enough. So we'll have a 3D art stream, much like this one. but Sundays are game streams. In this case, for tomorrow, we're going to be doing some League of Legends, but if you have any suggestions as to what kind of game we want to be playing, just to experience and be able to discuss and all sorts like that, you can leave it in the comments or the chat, and I'll have a look as well. Interesting suggestions would be good, just games that are particularly, maybe they don't have to be like completely strange or thought-provoking or anything, but just interesting. And there was an example of a streamer that played Mr. Bones recently, and that's like really obscure. I don't have a Sega Saturn or a way of emulating Sega Saturn, but I learned what Mr. Bones was from that, and it was such a strange experience, but it was one that I was pretty happy to watch. So that kind of thing, I guess. So let me know what kind of games you want to see. But for tomorrow, it's League of Legends, and I'm a crazy Rumble player, so we'll get to see some of that tomorrow. Alrighty then. Thank you so much for coming or watching, if you're watching after the fact. So if you would like to like and subscribe, that would be great. Thank you so much. Alrighty, we'll see you next stream. Goodbye.